What up? Welcome to Homegrown Hustle, where local brilliance takes the center stage. I'm your host, Matt Eichmann. Together, we're about to embark on an inspiring journey. Our community thrives on the wisdom of insightful leaders that are right here in our backyard. And we're bringing their expertise to your ears. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is your guide. Join us every week in celebrating innovation, guidance, and the power to inspire greatness. Let's explore the stories that shape our local business landscape, and together, let's ignite the spark of excellence. What's up, everybody? Matt Eichmann with the Homegrown Hustle podcast. I'm here with Dale Wills, the CEO of Centra Companies. He's got a lot going on. There's multiple companies there where he's just running through them all, and I kind of lost track. But Dale, thank you so much for joining us here today. We were just talking about a real estate and investment opportunity that you have. It's something that you're really excited about. I like to bring a lot of energy, so let's just kick it off with that. Let's talk a little bit about that opportunity that you have.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matthew. A little bit of backstory. About 2 years ago, one of my team members was talking to me about how he's not able to depreciate real estate that he has. We allow many of our employees are able to buy houses periodically at cost. And so we've got people that they'll buy houses on a regular basis and they'll keep them as rentals to be able to build their own wealth. And our tax code in the United States is written such that Congress wants us to invest in real estate. And so they give us tax breaks to do that. Well, you've got to be considered a real estate professional to do that. And if your primary income comes from W-2, there are certain tax breaks you don't qualify for. And so I'm looking at this really frustrated for him saying, how is it that I get all these breaks and you don't, and we're in the same business? You just happen to be one of my employees. And that started me really thinking, how do I help them accelerate their wealth building? They buy these houses and they're building wealth and it's awesome. But how do we accelerate that through tax, the tax code, just like I do? And that got us thinking and said, how do we do this? And ultimately, we're now 2 years removed from that thought process, and we've started a real estate equity fund. And so we said, well, do we even need to limit it to just our team members? And we'll open it up to anybody. So now we have this fund that anybody that wants to invest can invest. And now people are seeing a 17 to a 20% internal rate of return on their money. Another thing that's exciting is we offer to all of our employees, we have a simple IRA. And so we do matching funds. People invest in that. They can then invest in whatever. Well, we teamed up with Equity Trust. They're one of the biggest IRA management companies in the nation. They've got like $45 billion under management. We teamed up with them to where people can now, our employees, not just our employees, anybody that wants to, but our employees can transfer their IRA funds over to Equity Trust and then invest in the projects that we actively are building. And so it's a little bit of a unique offering because of the variety of what we're offering for the investors to be able to get that return. And so we're pretty excited about that because it's given some pretty
great return. I can hear it in your voice. Yeah, that's amazing. So that started from you trying to impact the lives of your employees, right? And then it also creates that opportunity. You're talking about a lot of finance, tax code there, and that the benefits of that and understanding how that all works, especially with real estate, I think is something that maybe some people that are already in real estate don't even understand. They just kind of hopped on that boat where, hey, let me buy a house and it's all it's like long-term wealth, right? But like the tax code, the depreciation is kind of like that phantom asset, right? On the P&L. And
yeah, you've got your depreciation, but you also have in real estate, you can do what's called bonus depreciation. And so let's just keep it simple. We'll use a house. So if you have a house and it's worth $100,000, you can't depreciate land. It doesn't depreciate. But let's say the house itself is worth $100,000. Well, you look at the house, and bonus depreciation is such, if you're going to depreciate it over say a 30-year period, and you take that 100,000, you divide it by 30, that's your depreciation each year. But you look at it and you say, well, the roof's not going to last 30 years. The carpet's not going to last 30 years. The appliances aren't going to last 30 years. There's a lot of components of that house that won't last 30 years. And so you can even accelerate your depreciation. You say, okay, you do what they call a cost segregation. You say, well, is this carpet going to last 5 years? So now you can depreciate your carpet for 5 years. Is my shingles are going to last, say, 15 years. So now I can depreciate that over 15 years. So I'm accelerating that. And so it gives you, an investor, the ability to depreciate it faster, which then lowers your tax liability, keeps more money in your pocket that you can now go to that next deal. The challenge is depending on what your tax classification is, not everybody can take advantage of that.
That was a mouthful there. I love
Yeah,
it
I
though.
talk fast and too much sometimes.
No, it's perfect. So all right, so that's something really new, really exciting that you got going on. But let's back it up a little bit and talk about like kind of how you got into land development, community development, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So for a short period of time, I left the industry altogether, but I've been involved in the industry pretty much my entire adult life. Starting out in the banking and mortgage industry, did a lot of development lending, construction lending. Then there's a period of time that I had a home building company. It was my own that we ended up selling. I worked for a company that was pretty fun. They created their own city. And so we created our own sewer company. We created our own water company. We built a golf course. We built the apartments. We brought in a grocery anchor. And that was 20, 26, 7, 8 years ago. And now today, I think that community's got 40,000 people live there. That was a
What
lot of fun. That was super exciting.
what
And
a what a massive amount of cooperation has to go into that. And like, I mean, is there a lot of finance and banking and all and like the real estate side, yes, but the human communication and all of that to be able to have such a massive endeavor is fascinating to me. And like, were you kind of involved with that like at the beginning of your career? Like development is kind of your background overall?
I was involved a little bit in construction.
Okay.
Then I did the banking. Then I was, overseeing a production home building company, and then from there went into the development company on the early stages of creating this community.
Okay.
So I
It's
bounced around a little bit here and there.
okay, but you've kind of found your niche, it sounds like. So in 2011 is when you started, right? Centra Companies. Tell us a little bit about what was going on there and like why you wanted to start this and grow it.
It's a lot of your listeners are entrepreneurs and have some exciting big goals. And I'm a big believer in our belief system will drive a lot of our decisions, good or bad. Sometimes our belief systems empower us and sometimes they hurt us. And those decisions sometimes are good decisions and sometimes aren't so good.
Yeah.
And so I have no college education. Quite frankly, I got expelled from high school my junior year and I've not been back to school since. And the interesting thing about that is, a belief system follows you where you go with that. And, the market collapsed in real estate in 2008. So I'm in real estate construction
hmm
and development, and the market collapses. And 2009, 10, it's like, okay, I've got to move on. I was working for a national company, and it was clear I needed to be moving on at some point. And
hmm
I'm looking at it and I'm going, well, my belief system at that point is I'm unemployable. Nobody's going to hire me. And so what do I do? There's a lot of people that were really qualified, smart people that were looking for work at that time in this industry. And so my
hmm
belief system says, well, I'm not employable. Nobody's going to hire me. What do I do about that? And it's like, well, if nobody's going to hire me, I'll just start my own company again because I've been successful before. I'll just do it again. And that's
hmm
really, I would like to say it was just this, I had this grand vision. It was just really as simple as I got to have a job and I got to feed my family. Nobody's going to hire me. So I'll just start my own company. And that's really what drove us.
And that's where it started. And it sounds like you saw some opportunity as there are so many people that needed employment and that were good people. So what was like that first 12 months like for you then? Like how many things did you have to overcome?
We were pretty fortunate. So when I told my employer I was leaving, they had operations in Minnesota, and they said, "Well, if you're leaving, we don't want to be there anymore. Would you buy our assets, and we'll leave the market?" And so I ended up buying all of their assets in Minnesota, which was really pretty great because that helped us start
hmm
right away. And there was a bank, a sizable bank, they've since been bought out, they're no longer here, that they reached out to me and said, we've got a bunch of these assets that we've foreclosed on. Would you be interested in buying them? And they had been pestering me quite a bit before we started Centra Companies. And they called me and I'd be like, I've got my own assets. I don't know what to do with. I got to figure out what to do with mine. I can't help you. And once we started Centra Companies, they called again and I was like, let's talk. And so we visited with them and said, here's some scenarios, 3 different scenarios. And they said, well, why don't you run the numbers, bring these scenarios back? And so we did. And ultimately they said, we'll provide you all the assets. We'll provide you 100% of the funding and you help us work through all these assets. So we started doing that and had a lot of success. It was a lot of fun. And so, we were working on assets that they foreclosed on, buildings that were partially finished, land developments that were partially developed, lots that they foreclosed on, they didn't know what to do. So it was all over the board. And so we started working closely with them. The interesting thing is the FDIC has a rule when the banks take foreclosures back, they've got to do a set aside that is more than the value of the asset that they have to set aside, and they can't touch that money. And so it's pretty costly for banks to sit on these assets. Well, what was pretty interesting is we started working through these assets and we had an agreement in place, and they had their routine audit from the feds. And the feds said, well, why do we have all this set aside? It's now considered a performing asset. Well, it was REO. And they said, well, you've got a contract with Centra and they're performing. And so they were instantly able to take millions of dollars and put them back into working capital that they could lend and do things with. And the fun part of that story is word got out on the street, and all of a sudden we had banks calling us left and right saying, can you do the same thing with us?
What a great position to be in. So now you went from being so that shift there, you went from being unemployable in your own mind to now like everyone's looking to have everything run through you. So that's awesome. That's a lot of moving parts. So how many people did you have to bring on board to help you through that first,
when we bought those assets, I was under a pretty strict non-disclosure agreement. They didn't want people to know that they were considering leaving. So I wasn't able to tell any of our team here, which we're all really loyal and we had great relationships. And I can remember part of what I negotiated is they had to, by court order, this company had to pay all the employees, if they let them go, a pretty lucrative severance package. And so part of my buyout agreement was you have to fire all these people and pay them this severance package. And they readily agreed to it. And so I can remember it was January 16th, 2011. They were flying in to sell me all the assets. So I called the company meeting that morning. I said, hey, you're all terminated. As of right now, you get the severance package. And if you would, please be back here in a couple of hours at this time, because I have something I want to share with you. I think you all would be interested in hearing. They're like, oh, okay. So they all leave. I go down, I sign, they fired me. So I like to say that was the day I got fired, or it's the day I started the new company. They fired me. And then I closed on all the assets, came back up to the office, everybody met. And I said, hey, by the way, I'm starting this company called Centra. And if you would like, you still get to keep your severance package. And if you'd like to be part of this, you have a job starting right now and you can stay with me. And they all stayed. I still have people that were from back 2011 that are still part of our team. So
but until that like final deal was made, you couldn't really.
Yeah, they had no idea that I was in negotiations to buy the assets. I terminated them and they were all surprised. And I said, just trust me on this.
Give me a couple hours. So I'm like, just a couple
hours.
That's exactly what. All right. So now, fast forward, you're building communities across the country. Now you got to focus here in Minnesota. One particularly in Hugo that I know you have going on, but like that concept where, I want to go back. You said you built a city, right? There's a lot of human beings that have never even thought that wasn't. They just think that it just like happens, right? Cities just pop up, but like to formulate that like in your mind or with like a group of other people, like the thought process that goes into these communities, like what are some of the things you have to think about when you go into that massive endeavor?
Yeah, development can be pretty complicated. Just creating a city is a prime example. You can't just go create a sewer plant. There's lots of Army Corps of Engineer requirements, EPA requirements, lots of requirements. And when you create a sewer plant, well, you've got to discharge the reclaimed water somewhere. And getting a discharge permit's extremely difficult to get. And you also have to meet certain standards, as the water quality. We certainly, none of us want, dirty sewage water going into our lakes and streams. And so that's very difficult. And that's actually why we started our own, the own sewer company of this company. Because they could not cooperate with none of the other sewer plants. And there was a farmer that had a discharge permit. And so, okay, you come in and you can have a share of the city if we can take your discharge permit. And so he did. And so, I mean, there's lots of complications. When you're developing, it's, what are your soils conditions? Can you actually build a road on this? Can you build a structure on top of these soils? Will it support it? You got to look at what is your groundwater table? How high is the water? And are we going to have flooding issues? You're looking at flood zones. If we have a major rain event, you've got to look at, you're putting all kinds of surface that's impermeable. So it rains, where's that water now going to go? It's got to go somewhere. We put roads in, rooftops, and it's now not absorbing to the ground. You've got to look at protected species. Is there habitat that we need to protect in our environment that we need to worry about? Then you've got all the city and the state and the county ordinances that you need to meet. What are you going to build? What's the product? What does the consumer want? There's a lot going into it, and it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, well, it's such a massive amount of human interactions, right? You have to really understand all these different things, and starting with plumbing, I mean, that's something that a lot of people take for granted nowadays, but when it goes into creating it, kind of got to start from what that infrastructure needs to look like. But beyond the actual land and putting that infrastructure in place, are there other things within these areas besides the land being for sale that you look for in these potential development sites? I'm out in the Lake Minnetonka area in Minnetrista. We just moved into a master plan community pretty much. And I didn't even know
no
it was
real
there.
estate. You just told everybody where you live.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, exactly. So come on by. We can hang out with the kids. It's great. So that doesn't just happen over the course of a couple months, right? I feel that takes a lot of time, and the amount of research and data that has to go into it. There's obviously economic impact on those communities and then those businesses. So when we're talking building a business community, bringing a bunch of homes into an area that impacts everything there massively, right? How do you think about that?
We really look at it community by community. So, we've got apartments, we've got product that's for empty nesters with no stairs. We've got first time buyer product. We got townhomes, move up. So we're really looking at the community and what the needs are. What is the unmet need? We've got a project we're at the tail end of in a city called Coon Rapids. And, the need we saw is a lot of the housing stock in that city was built years ago and had stairs. And it was a community that has a population that's interested in having no stairs. So we need to create a product that my kids have moved out and I want to stay in the community that I love. However, I don't want to deal with stairs anymore. I want to walk out of my garage with the groceries right into the kitchen, into the master bedroom, and I'll deal with it. And so we saw a need there and said, well, let's fill that. Whereas Hugo, you mentioned, we're in Hugo building there. The bigger need we saw there is affordability for first-time buyers. People that I'm willing to move out just a little bit. I want to have a home. I want to have my first home. I want that dream that I've been dreaming of. And I just don't have a lot of money. So how do we then design a product that's affordable for these families to get started? So we really look at it of what's the need in that community? What's the need in the area? And then you need to make sure there's accessibility. So you want to, Hugo's an examples on the 35 corridor. So people can jump on that freeway. They can go north, they can go south pretty fast and easy to wherever they're working, going to school, whatever their life brings them. And so, we look at that you want to be close to major arteries that's going to get them to where they need to go ultimately, because that's pretty important, especially as you get further out in a community like a Hugo.
So these families or these individuals that I'm not sure where you get that data from, but obviously you identify that there's individuals that are looking to make a buying decision for a home for different reasons. Sorry. Whether it's I'm having kids or I just kicked all my kids out of my house and want to like so do you like is there surveys or is that like where's that data come from and then like how do you identify that it like wants to be in a submarket from like the Twin Cities, for example?
Some of it, we don't necessarily do surveys. There are companies that'll do that and really
Hmm.
get in depth. A lot of it from us is just knowing the market and having experience. And so,
Cool.
you're looking at, there's demographics you can get from the Fed, that
Hmm.
shows what is the average age, what is the average family size, and then you're looking at what is the inventory. So looking at Coon Rapids, in the last 20 years, there's not been a lot of new homes built as compared to
Hmm.
Hugo. Half that city's been built in the last 20 years.
Yeah. No, nobody even heard of Hugo a few years ago.
Yeah. And so you're looking at it and going, okay, well, who's here currently? Who is buying? And so you look around in the market. Coon Rapids was more of a instinct was telling us that we needed that product. And it worked out well. We did really well in that project, but it was more of the instinct, in talking to people and trying to get a pulse on the community, whereas Hugo, it was a lot easier. It was a pretty obvious answer
Hmm.
because, it's a commuting town, for the most part. And usually in your commuter towns, you're targeting more of your entry level first buyer. And so there's not a science to it as much as just
You
understanding
just went
and
with your gut, is what you're telling me.
part of it. You just hope it's not indigestion that made that
Yeah.
decision.
So, like, as you're building these communities, you obviously are building a team around you, multiple teams within the different companies that you have. Tell me a little bit about how you kind of handle the people side of your business and managing multiple personalities, trying to march all in one direction.
One of the things that drives us, we're not perfect at this by any stretch. It's what we try to do. We have core values. So we have 5 core values as a company.
Hmm.
And the goal is that we have everybody understands those core values. Now, one of our core values is accountable. Well, your understanding of accountable might be different than my understanding. We could have different definitions. So we have those core values and then we actually define them. What does that core value mean to us as a company? And the goal is if we have core values, everybody is clear on what those core values mean. That helps them guide to what the ultimate decision should be. One of our core values is we
Hmm.
do the right thing. And so if they're dealing with a situation versus worrying about what a company handbook might say or a policy
Hmm.
might say, they're looking at it and saying, well, what is the right thing to do here? And when we're doing coaching, somebody comes in and says, I have this situation. What should I do about it? It's like, well, what do you think our core values would tell us to do? And so that really helps us a lot in developing and coaching our personnel. But
Hmm.
as you say, personnel is one of the most challenging things is because you've got lots of people that have lots of different talent. And how do you make sure you have them in that right seat to where they're really focused on what they're really good at? And then
Hmm.
how do you let them make decisions? I worry sometimes that as we grow as a company, you don't want to have too much red tape either. You want to just
Hmm.
hire really good people that are making good choices. So that's one of the things that we really use to try to help us to be successful with our team.
I mean, starting with core values, it's not a surprise that that was your answer because I've talked with a lot of CEOs and people that have built or run really large companies, and almost always it comes down to those core values and being able to have something that has so many moving parts in it, be able to function and like in a healthy way, like that, those like pillars, you kind of have to have them really defined, and then like everyone needs to know about it. So is that something that when a new employee comes in, like that's a day one type of thing for your company?
It's actually before they're even in. So we
Part of the
go
hiring
through.
process?
Yeah, we go through and hey, when I'm hiring somebody, I just take a blank piece of paper and down the side I write the 5 core values.
Hmm.
And my entire interview, I figure there's other people that'll make sure, if I'm hiring somebody in accounting, there's other people that are better qualified than me to make sure you understand the skills of
Hmm.
accounting. All I'm focused on are those 5 core values. And so I'm sitting here going, okay, if I ask you, I say, hey, Matthew, tell me what you think about our core value of accountable, or, tell me a situation where you were accountable. You're going to find an answer that I'm looking for. So instead of doing that, I just get to know you. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your family. And at some point, I'm going to be able to extract if you believe in that same principle. I'm going to be able to extract if you're going to always do the right thing. I'm going to extract the answers to that just through the course of conversation and directing that conversation that's going to allow me to see, do you meet the core values? Because if I say, Matthew, do you always do the right thing? Everybody's going to say, oh, absolutely, I always do. Whereas if I can get you to start telling me stories about your life and your background, I'm going to be able to identify, is your definition of doing the right thing the same as mine? And that's where my entire focus is. Once we've extended an offer, they come on board. Part of our onboarding process, we've got a process that we go through for an entire month. The very first day, we actually tell them what they went through in the hiring process. And it's funny because if I'm doing the onboarding, they will frequently say, yeah, I thought that was a really interesting interview. You never asked me about my skills. You never asked me. And they're like, now that explains why the
about their
interview.
childhood, their experiences, and how they handled themselves, and
Yeah.
kind of what they learned through the process sometimes, right?
Yeah. I would never hire the 16-year-old version of me, but what did you learn from the 16-year-old version of you? And how is that
How do you use
influence who
it
you are?
today, and how will you use it here in our company if
Yeah.
you get this role? So let's talk about the 16-year-old version of you. So you come from a family of 10, right?
Yep.
10 siblings. Where do you fall in that order?
I'm the 7th of 10.
Okay. So coming from a large family myself, like I think having that many other humans like in your space, you have to learn to communicate and to articulate your feelings and other things like that. So how, like, what are some things that you learned through that, or maybe through your childhood, that you still utilize to this day?
I'd say probably the most important is that every person in every situation is unique and different. My mom having 10 kids, periodically I can remember as a kid, somebody come up to her and they were struggling with one of their children, and they'd ask her for advice. And it was interesting. I can clearly remember her saying this more than once when I've witnessed it. She would listen to him, and then it'd be, what should I do? And my mom's answer was, every child comes to earth with a different personality. Just pray a lot. That was always her. And I look back at that, my parents treated me very different than my siblings. And it was, that was their way of, okay, each human is unique, and how do we meet their needs in a unique way? And that sticks with me, in raising. I've got 6 children of my own. And, how I treat one child, we love them all, but maybe how I deal with something from one child to another is going to be different. And then that's also true in our teams. The people that we work with, that we're with on a continual basis, we're all unique. We all have unique skill sets. And so we've got to treat them according to those skill sets. And if we treat everybody the same, then we're going to get the same results. And we're not going to get that unique ability and talent out of each person and allow them to blossom. I've got 6 kids that are all going in very different directions in their lives and doing some amazing things because they're all unique. And so how do you encourage that uniqueness of each human?
And then you have to be like flexible and adaptable to be able to like navigate all that. I mean, like the family dynamic and growing up, like it leads to so much of like who we really are and become. So you're talking about like you being treated differently than your siblings. Was that like a conversation that like your parents had with you, or was that something you just kind of had to pick up and figure out over time?
I've asked my mother that question. You really treated me different than the other kids. I didn't have a lot of rules. There was rarely any kind of a punishment. And I'm like, well, why was that? And she goes, son, I knew someday you were going to be a leader. I just didn't know if it would be in business or in prison.
So just that's
said,
amazing.
yeah, her biggest problem, she said, with me is, I was my sophomore year in high school, as an example, I was in a home economics class,
Hmm.
and we had to write this report of, okay, we've graduated from high school, and now we're on our own. What's, create a budget. What's rent going to be? What's food going to be? All of the different budget things. And then how are we going to make money? And we've got to balance that.
Hmm.
And so I wrote this and I got a D on this. And I went to the instructor and I'm like, how in the world did I get a D on this? And she's like, it's totally unrealistic what you wrote. And I said, how can you say this is unrealistic? She goes, you'll never make that much money right out of high school. I said, I make that much money right now. I'm a sophomore in high school. This is how much money I'm making right now. I own my own business. And she didn't believe me. But my mom said, you were so resourceful that we figured if we put too many rules down, you would just run away. And our worry
Hmm.
was you'd actually survive on your own and we might not see you again.
So, did you like grow up around business then? Because like making that much money and like disproving a teacher, that's a pretty epic story in general. But like, where did the entrepreneurial itch come from with you?
I think it was just, I was born with the gene. My
Yeah,
dad was
same.
a pharmacist. He ended
Okay.
up having his own pharmacy for the last 20 years of his career, but he's not an entrepreneur. He's a man that has a passion to help society be better.
Hmm.
And he wanted to have his own pharmacy so he could do more to do more good for people. And, my parents were always encouraging. I was in third grade and I started my own pig farm and, would raise pigs and I would sell them and
Hmm.
made a lot of money doing it especially as a third grader. And so it just was part of who I was, my genetics. I was always looking to, do the next deal and,
Hmm.
and grow something and make something bigger and better.
So just always a hustler. So years and years, now you got six kids, working on a bunch of communities. Like, how do you spend most of your time right now, Dale?
I'm really fortunate. I have a pretty full life. We've got multiple companies that I'm involved in that I really enjoy. We've got a small cattle ranch in Ramsey, Minnesota that I love it. It was a childhood
Hmm.
dream. And about 5 years ago, I saw this property for sale and I said to my wife, I said, what do you think? And she said, yeah, let's do it.
You
And
got a bunch of pigs?
we do have we have 4 pigs right now, but we're focused more on cattle,
Gotcha.
raising beef. And so that's a lot of fun. We do lots of adventures. I've got a couple of boys that are just passionate about college football and basketball. So we'll travel to a bunch of games each year. If it's outside, we love it as a family. So we do a lot of fun stuff. Pretty full life. You know, we love boating and water skiing.
Hmm.
We love motorcycle riding. It's everything. Let's do it. If it's fun, we're in.
That's awesome. So really, like within your businesses, like you're the acting CEO, right?
That's
Um,
correct.
so what does that mean to you? Like somebody at a high level that's functioning as a CEO? Because I think CEO, like I'm just like a self-declared CEO at Abracadabra, right? And that means one thing to me, but what does it mean to you?
I think for me, I think it changes. Where are you in the trajectory of your company? What are your
Hmm.
needs? We've been in an evolution over the last several years. We've brought in some really great key people to run different companies and to help us grow. One time a CEO meant that I'm dealing with the day-to-day routine, making strategic decisions on
Hmm.
HR or whatever it may be. That's a routine. Whereas now for me, the CEO role is more defined by bigger picture relationships, strategic partnerships, the vision of where we're going. And that's where I
Hmm.
put more of my energy. Whereas I'm not involved in the day-to-day, issues that you're
Yeah,
needing to deal with. But that hasn't always
kind of.
been true.
So is that something that you've had to learn, or have you had a mentor that's kind of helped you be able to like continue to zoom out and like have that vision and thinking about the company down the road?
Yeah, I've had some mentors, and unfortunately, I haven't had as many as I would love to have. And I'm a big believer in we become the average of our peer group. So
Hmm.
if you take your 5 closest peers, generally you're going to become the average of that. And I like to talk to young entrepreneurs about this. Say, so what do you do about that? I'll ask, say, Matthew, how many people do you know that you would consider a peer that you associate with regularly that is where you want to be 10 or 20 years from now? And the answer is almost always 0. If somebody says 3, I say, well, you don't have very big dreams. You need to change your dreams, have bigger dreams.
Mm-hmm.
They usually say 0. So what do you do about that? If you're going to be the average of your peer group, how do you upgrade your peer group? That's a tough deal. What do I do about it?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think the important thing is that this podcast is a perfect example of what you're doing here. Listen to podcasts, learn from other people, read as many books as you can get your hands on. And a lot of that's free. You can go to the local library and read a lot of books. You can listen to these podcasts for free.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you advance and you become a little, you've got more disposable income and maturity, but then you start looking for associations and groups to join to create that peer group. And if you're accelerating, you're going to eventually grow out of some of those peer groups. Say, okay, I've matured beyond this peer group, and now I need to go find another one that's at a higher level. I've been involved in lots of different masterminds, peer groups, whatever you want to call them. And okay, this served me really well, but now the next season in life, I need to find something bigger or different. And so it's really important. So for me, a lot of my experiences come from peer groups or reading or podcasts and hearing things. My hope is that people who are listening to this say, hey, there is a little nugget from his experience I can now apply to my experience, that I can now be just a little bit better because of his experience. And that's really where a lot of it for me comes from, is just constantly learning and growing.
So have you always been like an avid learner, or is that
No.
what changed?
The first book I ever read was in 3rd grade, and it was How to Raise Pigs.
Makes sense. I mean, starting a pig business, you gotta.
So literally, yeah. I think the second book I ever read might have been in 8th or 9th grade. I think by the time I was 22 years old, I'd read 3 or 4 books in my entire life. And I was at I don't exactly remember, some type of a conference, but there was a speaker there, and he was in his mid-30s. This was in 1993 or 4. And he was worth $1 million. At that time of my life, I'm thinking $1 million, that's huge. This guy's just uber rich. I want to be like him. And he was talking and he said, this is back 93, 94. We didn't have cell phones, very few people had cell phones. Very few people had laptops they carried around. We didn't have access to information like we have now. The point I remember him making is he would go to the hotel, and every hotel had a phone book, and the phone books had yellow pages. And the yellow pages were basically Google. So if I'm a plumber, I'm going to put an ad in the yellow pages. And so if somebody needs plumbers, they go to the plumbing section and they look at all the different ads, decide who they're going to hire. And he said, I read every day.
Plug this in for me.
And so that's how I attribute a lot of my success, is reading every day. And so he said, I would go to a hotel, and if I didn't have something to read, I would open up the yellow pages and just learn about this area. And I thought, okay, this is brilliant. That was the point for me where there was a pivot that I said, I've got to be a consumer of information. I read 50 to 60 books a year. And I'll readily admit, I don't love reading. I love content. I love information, but I don't necessarily just love reading. I love what I get from reading. And that's where it all started, was this guy saying, read the yellow pages when you're in a hotel, but read every day, learn.
That's awesome. So what do you enjoy learning about? Like 50 to 60 books a year. That's a lot of books, man. And you're actually reading these, not just doing Audible.
I use the term reading, I use it loosely. If I read 60 books this year, I would say 45 to 50 of them will be through, an Audible or something.
Gotcha.
And then, 15 to 20 of them will be physical hardback books that I sat down and physically read each word.
So my brain like craves new information and content. Like I don't know if it's the same for you, but when I've gone through periods where I'm not like consuming new content, it's almost like some of like the thought process or decision making in other areas of my business or my life, it kind of like starts to swirl a little bit. Do you feel like a crave to like bring in that new content or information, and like that the ongoing action of that helps you do what you do?
Yeah, I've gotten to the point that I almost can't be idle. If I enjoy on our farm, working on the farm, and it's I'll put earbuds in and work and listen to a book. Sitting at home, we don't watch much TV. We do enjoy watching sports together, but just sitting there and watching TV or doing nothing, I just don't enjoy. And so,
Mm.
yeah, it's now just become ingrained with me of reading books or listening to podcasts. It's part of who I am. And
Hmm.
so it's been a long time since I've gone a drought without doing that. So to be honest, I'm not even sure what that would be like.
That that's good. I mean, so you're consuming this information ongoingly. You've learned a lot. Sounds like you interact with a lot of other entrepreneurs and CEOs. Is there like some things that you've learned or things you see in other people that are like habits or characteristics that lend to success or failure in kind of that visionary role?
Yeah, I think the big key is your belief. You've got to
Hmm.
have a belief system that you can do it, which is in part why it's so important to be surrounded by people. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have some big dreams and aspirations that you want
Hmm.
to accomplish some really cool stuff. And we've all experienced it. If most self-employed people, can identify with, it's a pretty lonely world. It's sometimes it's hard to find friends that can relate. Sometimes it's hard to find friends that can be excited. Matthew, you've done some really amazing stuff with your business as a perfect example.
Thank you.
You're kind of limited how many people you can go brag about that with.
Yeah,
And
because like people don't really like that like the person that brags about themselves, and
not at
even though they're
all.
just excited, right? So it's
But you need a
hard when you
friend.
have
You need a
success.
friend to say, look, I'm killing it. And this is a lot of
Yeah.
fun. And you need that friend that says, that is so cool. Keep doing
Yeah,
it.
good job, dude.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is we all have long lists of people that are like, Matthew, why are you doing that? Oh,
Hmm.
you'll never make that work. Oh, geez. Why would you?
Yeah,
We all have a
it's usually
long
not
list.
people that are more successful than you, though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I've had very few successful people tell me I can't do something.
Hmm.
They might give some advice and say, have you thought about this? And it's like, oh, yeah, if they're successful, I'm going to really listen to that. But, I think one of the keys is don't listen to that really long list of people that say you can't do it, or why would you do that? Or, you just have to figure out how to block that out and
Like
make
put
sure you're
on those
hearing the people.
blinders.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean
absolutely.
that because I mean all that's distraction, and it takes away from like your focus, really. And it's from people that don't even like they don't their in their input or their feedback, like it really doesn't matter because they're not talking from any level of experience. So if it was a subject matter expert, then maybe the feedback would mean something. But
Yeah.
that's really hard, like sometimes, because like those people are usually people that you care about and you're close to, whether it's your family, your siblings, friends, neighbors. Like being able to separate that and identify, hey, I can't talk about all these things, like, but I can still like love them or be friends with them. Like how do you navigate that? Like you find your peer group and you talk about that with those people, but how do you navigate like not really having those conversations with people that maybe wouldn't be too excited for you?
That is the toughest thing.
Hmm.
That's why entrepreneurship sometimes can be so lonely is I just simply avoid the conversations. I just don't talk
Hmm.
about it. I'm at a success point in my life now that it's pretty easy.
Hmm.
You hit a certain level of success and people don't tell you your ideas are stupid anymore.
Yeah.
There's a music called "The Fiddler on the Roof," and the part I love, he's singing a song and he says, "When you're rich, people think you really know," and so it's like, well, yeah, I could kind of relate to that. The more successful you come, the more sometimes people you think they know things that you really don't know, and so I don't deal with that so much. But early on, it was hard. When you're trying to get going and people are like, "Just go get a job," you know.
Yeah.
You, you,
Just
you,
deflate. It can deflate you. So like how did you keep going through all that? Just that amount of confidence in yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of just the belief system. For me, it was part. Back to the I don't have a choice. Where else am I going to
Hmm.
go? Um, and then just the hunger to do more and be bigger. But I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs that they get going and they quit too early because of all the naysayers. And then they go back and then they're miserable the rest of their life working a 9-to-5 job. And I just have been lucky to avoid that.
Mm-hmm. So, so what keeps you going now? Like that, because you've been doing this for a while. You probably could stop doing it and be good, maybe. Is there any part of you that's like slow down, or would your kids kind of get driven crazy, or your wife driven crazy because you don't sit still?
So about a year ago, my brother joined our team. He's the president of Centra Companies. And when he joined the team, he asked me, how much longer you plan on doing this? And I said, until it's not fun anymore.
Hmm.
That's when I'm going to quit. And I'm having a ton of fun. So I have no desire to quit. Our core focus as a company is we improve everything we touch. And to me, that's just a lot of fun. Whether it's we're improving the lives of those that work with us, whether it's we're improving a community, whether it's we're improving somebody to help them build wealth. But that's our core focus is we improve everything we touch. And sometimes that's through people. Sometimes that's through helping create wealth. Sometimes that's through building a community. Sometimes that's through improving an apartment complex that's falling apart. That just brings me a lot of passion. And so as long as I'm having fun, let's keep doing it and improve everybody's lives that are around us.
Yeah, that's so in line with how I try to operate. And I mean, I'm super grateful for you coming on. You've got a lot of experience that I think a lot of people can learn and grow from. So as far as like you giving back, obviously you came on here. That's one way that you're giving back. You've got all these companies where you're coaching and leading people to probably go on and do that same thing within the communities. Are there other ways that you personally like try to give back to either small business or the communities that you're in or have kind of helped develop?
Yeah, I've been involved a lot. I got within our church. I'm very involved.
Hmm.
I currently serve in a capacity where it's not a paid capacity, but it would be a pastor of a congregation. We've got a few hundred people, so very involved in that. I probably spend 15, 20 hours a week doing that. We've been involved. Those that might be familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People,
Hmm.
they've got a product that's for schools to implement in schools. It's very costly, a lot of training. We've sponsored a few schools in that, and being able to help young people. I've got a friend, Andre Norman, that he spent 14 years in prison, and
Hmm.
he figured out how to turn his life around, and now he's giving back. And he has a belief that we need to go back to our roots and help those people figure out how we did it. So for him, he does a lot of service in prisons saying, I've got to go back. I figured out how to turn my life around and get out of that lifestyle, and I'm doing some great things. I've got to go back and help them. And, I was pretty fortunate in my teenage years that there were some key people and I had the ability to get out of a cycle that was bad. And I've done some really great things in my life. And, so I really love investing in young people. And, to Andre Norman's point of, I invest a lot of time and energy in young people and helping them turn their lives around. I've not been involved in 5 or 6 years now, but I was involved for many years as a scoutmaster in the scouting programming, helping young men, learn
Hmm.
skills and develop to be something great. And so lots of different ways that we've tried to give back. And, it's really about how do we improve everything we touch.
Where's that come from?
Yeah,
Did
I
you like
think it,
learn that along the way,
I
or
think it
how?
fundamentally starts from my parents. My dad was poor his entire life. I grew up very poor, and it was mostly because he gave everything away.
Hmm.
Everybody had a greater need than he did, and so he would give money away faster than he would bring money in, and he's still that way. And
Hmm.
so my parents really, I think it was just from a young age, it was instilled to me of we give back, we help, we help others in need. And I can remember being a kid at sometimes going, Dad, when are we going to give back to ourselves? I think we're in need. We were so poor that we couldn't afford to fix our vacuum, so we had to sweep the carpets.
Hmm.
And yet they invited a guy to go live in our house, and then found this old dilapidated trailer he could live next to our house because he had no place to live. Like, we're giving this guy a home, and we can't even afford to vacuum
Hmm.
our carpets. And at the time that was really hard to grasp. And now I look back and say, what a blessing that they taught me that principle to, you give back whatever you have.
Hmm. I mean, thank you for sharing that story. So is it really the give back that like continues to motivate you? Is any part of it like coming from that like hard upbringing, like wanting to make sure that you never have that again? Because I come from like not the best upbringing, but like my parents weren't wealthy. Six kids, private school. They invested a lot into us. My parents did, but like we didn't have a lot of money. I remember having similar conversations to what you just described. So part of me, like I've thought about, like, is it like wanting to run from that and never let my kids have that like keeps motivating me, or like started it maybe. Do you have any of that feeling or sentiment, and as far
You know,
as like
that's
the
an interesting
drive that you have?
it's an interesting question, and I don't know that poverty drives me.
Hmm.
In that a lot of the principles I learned were from being really poor. And if I was raised in a home that had money, I wouldn't
Hmm.
be who I am today. And so I'm really grateful for
Yeah.
the trials and the struggles we went through of having no money and figuring out how to
Hmm.
make ends meet. That was really powerful. And so for me, I think I'm more driven, which is interesting because I wasn't a learner as a kid. I was driven in starting businesses and doing things, but I wasn't a
Hmm.
learner as a child. But I think, the biggest way for me to give back is through education. The
Hmm.
7 habits, it's called Leader and Me in schools. And that's teaching kids the 7 habits, and how to apply them in
Hmm.
their life. And I use that as an example. That can change generations. I can help you out with your mortgage. And, there are times that maybe we do that we help people that are in need,
Hmm.
certainly, but that just helps you this month. But if we can provide you a different mindset, if we can provide you a different education, that can affect generations to come. And so it's an interesting question that I don't know that I can pinpoint exactly what the
Hmm.
history that drove me to this point, because it certainly wasn't my childhood from being a learner.
Yeah.
So it's a great question I'm gonna have to ponder.
Yes, got a good one. So we've got a few more minutes here. So one thing you've brought up like since the beginning is really like that concept of like your belief system. So for somebody who maybe doesn't really have like a formalized thought around that for themselves, like do you have any like pointers or recommendations that you could give somebody to kind of establish at least like some resemblance of that for themselves?
Everybody has a belief system. The challenge is it
Hmm.
empowering you or hindering you? Use the example of my belief system was I was unemployable. So I've got to start a new company. I've been self-employed. I know I can do it. I can be successful. I've been successful with many businesses. My belief system is nobody would hire me. Was that true? I don't really
Hmm.
know. I look back, I have no idea. If I believed I was employable, would I have found a job? I don't know. So on one hand, you can say that belief system really hurt me, believing that I was unemployable. On the other hand, you can say, well, we started a new business that's doing a lot of great
Hmm.
things. And so maybe it empowered me. So we all have belief system. I think what's important is we need to look at what are our thoughts? What are the constant thoughts that we have? And is it going to empower you or is it going to hurt you? And
Hmm.
that's where I think there's a lot of classic books, The Magic of Thinking Big and Think and Grow Rich, and some of those type books that they talk about that. Think and Grow Rich. It's what are you thinking about? What are the dominant thoughts that you have? And
Metacognition, right?
yeah, so how do you change that belief system? How do you change it to where I really can do something? It's T. Boone Pickens wrote, the second billion's easier. So he makes billions of dollars, he loses it all, and then he does it again.
Hmm.
Well, I believe part of that, why T. Boone Pickens was able to do it so easy the second time, in part, there's lots of reasons, but in part, it's because he's been there before and he knew he could do it. So he had a belief system that he could do it again because he's done it before. And that's in part what helped him do it so quickly a second time.
I love that. So, I mean, we've covered a lot here today. I really appreciate everything that we've gone through. So, you're still active, growing your business and communities. So in like 5 years, where's Centra Companies gonna be?
Our goal right now is, we've got the Centra Capital Partners. It's raising funds. It, allows people to invest and be able to invest in alternative investments that are not accessible to most people. They can invest in new home subdivisions or different asset classes. And so
Hmm.
our goal is to take that and really spread throughout all of the United States, to be able to do things that back to our core focus of we improve everything we touch. So whether it's, we're doing a hotel in Gainesville, Florida, or we're doing an apartment complex in Kansas City, Missouri, we're really good at real estate. We know what we're doing. We've got some great talent.
Hmm.
How do we allow other people to invest in those same assets, build wealth alongside of us, and then improve lives as a result, through building communities, through improving buildings. You go look at, areas that are really struggling economically, and the buildings look terrible. The community
Hmm.
looks terrible. And so, through real estate, we can really impact the trajectory of a community and people's lives. You think about it, Matthew, whether your formidable years were a positive influence or a negative influence, a lot of what you do today is influenced from when you were 5 and 6 and 10 years old. Well, in real estate development, we're creating the community that those memories were made in. Whether it's the house and the memories of learning how to ride a bike in the front yard or
Hmm.
playing catch with somebody in the backyard, we're creating those communities. And so our goal is to just expand that and have a broader reach, that we can create those communities and give people the opportunity to build wealth alongside what we're doing, and just do it in a bigger way is the direction we're trying to go.
Hmm. Are you still going to be involved at that point? As long as it's fun, probably, huh?
Yeah, my wife tells me, she goes, "You will never retire." I said, "Why is that?" She goes, "You can't sit still long enough."
Yeah, my wife says the same thing to me. So, do you have
You
like
know, so yeah,
hobbies?
Matthew, when we're both in our hundreds, we're just going to
Yeah,
be having a great time.
yeah. As long as it's fun, I'll be ticking. So, do you have like hobbies? Obviously, you got 6 kids and all that. Like, how do you stay busy outside of like doing a bunch of cool stuff with your businesses?
That's I'm in a really fortunate point at this point, because I've got really talented people that are running things, and as a family, we're pretty intentional. We meet pretty
Hmm.
regularly and we set goals. We've applied the same principles at work in our home. And
Hmm.
so, at work, we sit down and we say, where do we want to be 10 years from now? Where do we want to be 3 years from now? Where do we want to be a year from now? And with that, we meet quarterly and say, okay, if this is where we want to be in 10 years and in 3 years and a year, what has to happen this quarter? What needs to
Hmm.
be accomplished this quarter? And then we set goals of what are we going to do this quarter? And then in the next quarter we do it. And we've applied that same principle in our home. And so we sit down and we say, where do we want to be long term? What are things we want to accomplish this year? And so we'll brainstorm and throw all these ideas down. And then we say, okay, well, when are we going to accomplish it? And then each quarter we sit down and we say, okay, what is it we're going to do? And so an example, we love to water ski in our home. And I'd love to get a water ski coach and be a better water skier.
Hmm.
And so we said at the beginning of the year when we met, we said, well, let's get a water ski coach this summer. Second quarter comes around. We said, okay, what do we need to accomplish to hit that goal this quarter? And it was, okay, we need to go out and find a coach. So I went out and found a water ski coach. We got a really busy second quarter, but he's going to start coaching us in July when we have a little bit more time and learn to be a better water skier. And so we have lots of hobbies that we do. But the important thing, if you're self-employed, is you've got to be intentional about it, or you're going to
Hmm.
be all consumed by work. It's just so easy to do that. And so, we're going to learn to water ski this summer. We're actually going to go skydiving in August as a family, because that's something that one of them said we want to do. And
So that's an incredible amount of intent behind that within your family unit. Has it always been that way, or like how did you implement that into your business, like with your kids?
we've always had it at some level.
Hmm.
When we were poor, we first got married, and I made a commitment that my relationship with my wife's going to be the most important relationship I have, and I'm going to really work at it. And my actions don't always reflect that she's the most important. And so, I'm going to do my best. We're going to go on a date every week the entire time we're married. Now, have we been successful? No. There's been lots of weeks that we've missed. But when we were first married and we were poor, we had no money. It's like, well, how do you take your wife on a date when you have no money? And we started having kids right away, and we can't afford a babysitter, and so right from the start we were pretty intentional and said, okay, well, I can remember we'd have dates, and it might be, I'd turn the couch so it faced a different way to the TV, and I'd make homemade popcorn because that's nearly free. And this is back when you'd rent VHS tapes, and it'd be $1.99, and so I'd spend $1.99. That's our date night. put the kids to bed and we'd sit there and I'd make it feel like we went somewhere.
Hmm.
And so it was pretty early on that we tried to be intentional with it. And it looks different. Today I can afford a water skiing coach. Today I can afford
Hmm.
to take the family skydiving. But, 30 years ago, I could barely afford a $1.99 movie rental.
Hmm.
But we were intentional about it. And I think that's the important thing is don't let life just happen to you. Be intentional about planning and organizing. We go
Hmm.
on vacation and some people hate vacationing with me because they say we're way too programmed and we're doing too much. They say, can we just relax? I'm absolutely, let's relax, but be intentional about it. Plan it.
Hmm.
This afternoon, we're going to sit on the beach and do nothing. I'm okay with doing
Yes.
nothing as long as that's the plan. But to just sit around and do
Hmm.
nothing for the sake of doing nothing,
Yeah.
no, I can't do it.
Yeah. Me, like, so do you have like a weekly or like regular process to go about like ensuring like as like I mean we sit down for this year, this quarter, and we have these goals, but then like when it comes to like okay, today's Sunday, tomorrow's Monday, like all these things need to occur, and then all of those things add up to this what I need to do this month. Then all that adds up to the quarter. Like how do you bring it all down to like what's like really in front of you?
So we're not as rigid as we are at work. At work, we do an
Hmm.
entire offsite, full day.
Hmm.
We reflect on the last quarter. We think about the first quarter. We set specific goals. We set specific scorecards to measure how we're doing.
Hmm.
And at the end of the year, we do a 2-day offsite, looking at the last year, planning the next year. We're not as rigid as that as a family. We do meet quarterly and we'll plan
Hmm.
out the next quarter. We meet annually. What do we want to accomplish this year? But we don't meet every week. So as a family, it's more of a as needed. But we'll
Makes
plan out
sense.
the quarter and we'll make assignments. Okay,
Hmm.
who's going to find and schedule,
Hmm.
skydiving? And who's
Hmm.
going to find a water ski? Who's
Hmm.
going to schedule that? And then as needed, we'll meet periodically as a family and say, okay, what's the status? How are we doing? We just barely met. We love going to various college football and basketball games. And so we met just a week ago to plan out the fall. Well, what games
Hmm.
do we want to go to? When are we going to go to them? Who wants to go to which games? And, map that all out. So we're not as rigid as work, but we are kind of rigid and
Well,
it's a little
well, I
bit
mean, the
weird.
intent, it's the amount of intent. No, I absolutely freaking love it. I'm the same way. It's like being able to, I mean, you can't really control time, right? Because that everyone's got the same amount of time, but the focus that we have within that time is where some of us become really successful and other people don't because the focus isn't there. And yeah, I'm waking up and I don't know what day it is. Well, it's hard to really drive anywhere when that's the state of your existence, but having that intent and waking up with like something that moves you, like it's so important, especially being an entrepreneur. Like it's gonna like being in business is not easy. Like and being in life is not easy. Something's gonna punch you in the face every morning. And being able to keep going and persevere is it's what it's all about. You can't quit. So I got a couple questions. Just one more about like hustle to like within business. What does the word hustle mean to you?
I just get up and do it. Just go.
Simple. Wow.
Make things happen. You know,
Hmm.
I love the saying succeed or fail fast.
Hmm.
You're going to fail. I've failed many a times, but let's do it quickly. Don't be so rigid that you're trying to plan everything out. Don't let
Hmm.
perfect get in the way of progress.
Yeah,
And
I mean, having action so that you have feedback to make more decisions and progress off of is important. But that's where a lot of people get stuck because they don't want to fail, and
yeah,
that's
it's
it's
that
hard.
fear. When I was, I played basketball in the city rec league in fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. Ninth grade comes around and they have basketball tryouts. And, I was doing some of the practices before tryouts with the team and I didn't try out. And I didn't try out because I was afraid of failing. What if I get cut? Now our team really sucked. So I'm pretty sure I
Hmm.
would have made it. I don't know if I'd have played or not, but I probably would have made it on the team. But I was so afraid of failing that I didn't even try out because I
Hmm.
was afraid of being cut and being a failure. So I didn't even try. And I think that happens to a lot of us. We're so afraid of failure that we'll never succeed. And
Hmm.
you have to figure out how to overcome that. How did I overcome that? I don't know. I have, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of things I can look at as a kid I didn't do because I was afraid to
Hmm.
fail. Now
Yeah.
it's like, if I fail, I could start again.
Yeah. Well, one way like I've had to like trick myself to thinking about it because I've definitely gone through those periods where I had that fear of failure and that created a lack of action. But like what I've identified that I love learning, and like through failure, we can now identify a learning opportunity. Because like if you failed, that means you did something that created an outcome you weren't happy with. So like, what do you learn from that, and then how do you like use that to do something different? Because learning, as long as we take it and do something with it, like that's a win. So I've kind of like twisted it around my own mind to like kind of, I don't know, play mind games with myself. That's what I do. So maybe that'll help somebody. Maybe it'll just get them all to think I'm really weird, which I don't blame them. So for anybody that
We're
wants,
entrepreneurs. Everybody thinks we're weird at some level. So
it's true. Like that
just,
guy's kind of he's out there.
just
Um,
embrace it.
yeah, I've just had to learn to accept it, and my wife is too. So, well, thank you so much for coming on. If anyone wants to like reach out to you or get in contact with Centra, like what's the best platform or way for them to engage or
Yeah,
interact
our
with you?
team we're pretty active on LinkedIn. So I've got a
Hmm.
pretty active LinkedIn account. That's a great way to get a hold of us. The investment arm,
Hmm.
centracapitalpartners.com. If people are interested in some of what we're doing, our website, Centra Companies, or centrahomes.com. I just love seeing people succeed. And if I can just be a little part of that influence, we love it.
That's awesome. Well, we need more guys like you, Dale. Well, thanks again for joining us on the Homegrown Hustle podcast. Really appreciate you joining us. Check us out on Facebook, social media, anywhere you go to get your content. Dale, appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing what you do with Centra in the future, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Matthew. It was good to be with you.
Thank you so much. We're gonna wrap right there. Thank you. Like I really appreciate it. I learned a lot through that 70 minutes or whatever it was there. Yeah. So was that good on your end? You think
Yeah,
it can
no,
bring
I
some
thought
value?
you did an excellent job. You're a good interviewer. It
Thank
was
you.
engaging. You did a great job.
I'm kind of a ping pong ball at times, I will be honest. Sometimes I have something in my mind that I kind of planned on asking, but something you say like triggers a different train of thought. But
I don't do
um
a lot of podcasts. I do 5 or 6 a month. So I
hmm.
do a fair number. I
Hmm.
think some of the best ones are the ping pong. I think you did a
Perfect.
great job. You
Yeah,
took the
that's fine.
conversation where it would lead versus
Hmm.
being so rigid and structured, because if you have the question, a lot of your listeners are going to have the same question, but if you get
Hmm.
rigid, well, nobody wants to hear it because why didn't you ask that other question that came to your mind, but it wasn't part of
Hmm.
the script? So I think you did amazing.
Thank you. Well, so one thing I think that's kind of unique that could come from this is like I know a lot of people think of developers and maybe within like the development or like the private equity and like the building of the real estate, like it's more normal, but like the humanization of somebody in that role is something that I don't know a lot of people that are in developing, and I know there's even more people that know nobody that does that. So I think that within the community that we have, I think like having a face and like somebody with real stories can do a lot for kind of bridging some of that gap, I guess, if there is
Yeah.
one. Any other feedback you got? Anything
Yeah.
else?
Ask yourself why you have to wait 5 years to expand. Don't tell me
Mm.
the answer. Tell yourself the answer.
All right. I'll have to shoot you an email on that one or something.
I want you 10 years from now to sell your company just like Fox and
Mm.
I don't know what Fox put in their pocket. I think it was
A
80 million
lot.
bucks or something. So I want to see you do that in 10 years.
I Yeah, I mean, I'm all about touching people's lives and growing something. So probably for the sake of that conversation, it's more just like where my current focus is. But I
Yeah.
know the upside is massive within pest control and like how the business is structured. So it's really just a matter of like the resources I have in front of me and kind of the vision we put in place. I've got a couple of my brothers working with me, so I don't really see myself like it's hard for me to like have that thought about like okay, I actually exit and then I'm out of there and make a bunch of money. But
You don't have to exit either. You can just make piles
true.
of cash. I
Yeah.
mean, you have a passion to change lives and improve everything.
Hmm.
the more cash you have, the more lives you can touch.
Yeah, you got to make money. You can't just like give it all away, because then you don't have anything in your bucket to go and distribute.
Just your influence with this podcast. Poor people can't do podcasts.
True.
So the more capital you have, the more good you can do. And it doesn't mean you need to sell your business, but you've done some really, really good stuff in the last, 7 years now. And so
I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, just where do you want to be from 10 years from now, and think really big and then go for it.
Love that. Thank you for that. That means a lot. It'll probably be less than 5 years. So no, we're just trying to do cool stuff. Right now I got a young family, so as long as everyone stays happy and healthy, I'm going to keep just blowing it up and trying to do that. So are you expanding into these other type of resi service areas?
Into the other what?
Like residential services from a capital standpoint, or like the companies that you got going on? Because I know they're like home services and residential services is something a lot of private
It crosses
equity.
my mind periodically. Currently, we're not, but it does cross my mind. I've got a friend. He lives in Austin, and he picks an industry, and then he buys everybody he can in that industry, rolls them all up, and then he improves them and makes them better, and then he sells them for these huge multiples. And every once in a while, think about that. He actually did that with pest control.
Not surprised. I mean, it happens all the time. But that like access to capital is one of the things that limits so much business growth. So, I mean, having that really is like, it's the magic in the bucket. Like it's the biggest tool everybody needs in business to be able to go out there and do something.
There's some newer SBA loans that, you can get $5 million, up to $5 million. And the qualifying for some of those SBA loans are pretty minimal. So there would be some opportunities in your world. I would caution you, if you wanted to do something, you're looking for capital, I'm always interested in teaming with talented people. I would caution you on giving up equity, though. If there's a way to do it without getting equity, because your problem is that somebody that's investing, they're going to want a piece of the action.
Yeah.
Whether it's an equity company, whether it's an individual, they're going to want some ownership. And you'll want to be cautious with that. But there's some specific SBA loans that, it's pretty minimal qualifying that allow you, because SBA is all focused on job growth. Well, if SBA gives you a $5 million loan, you're going to create a lot of jobs with that $5 million. And that's exactly what they want to do. And so, that would be an area you could look at that could help accelerate your growth, because there's a lot of money, and, the rules to borrow are a lot less stringent than, development loans or other types of business loans. And so that would be an area you could definitely look into that would help accelerate your growth.
That's good. I'm definitely going to do that. I appreciate it, Dale. Well, we're almost to the end of our time. If there's anything I can ever do for you, feel free to reach out to me directly at any time. I just am thankful for the 90 minutes you gave me here. And yeah, thanks for all the kind words you've had.
It was great. And if there's any way I can support you, keep in contact. I love to develop and keep relationships.
Awesome. Well, I'll take you up on that. So thank you so much, Dale. Really appreciate your time. Thanks again for joining us on Homegrown Hustle. Our local business community thrives because of the brilliant leaders right here in our backyard. And it's been an absolute privilege to provide them with a platform to share their invaluable expertise. Stay tuned for more insight, wisdom, and inspiration from our local business champions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Together, we'll continue to nurture and expand our homegrown success stories. Matt Eichmann signing off until our next insightful episode.